The key was on a separate ring. It had always been on a separate ring, brass, old, a little warped at the bow like it had been gripped too many times. Her mother kept it in her coat pocket. Not in a drawer, not on the hook by the door where the other keys lived. In her coat pocket, like something she might need in a hurry, or needed to keep close. Carol Hensley stood at the end of the basement hallway and looked at the door. She was 53 years old. She had lived in this house until she was 18. She had walked this hall hundreds of times. She had never opened that door. Not because she forgot, because she was afraid of what she might remember. Ruth Hensley died on the 3rd of April, just before dawn. She was 78 years old, and she had lived in the house on Meridian Street for 47 of them. Breast cancer, then the lungs. The last 8 months were slow. Carol had driven down from Columbus every other weekend, sitting with her mother through the news she kept on too loud and the meals she barely finished and the long silences that felt, toward the end, more comfortable than anything they said to each other. The funeral was small. Ruth had outlived most of her friends. There was a cousin from Tennessee, a neighbor who brought a casserole, 2 women from the church who remembered her from before she stopped going. That was all. Carol took 6 weeks before she came back for the house. The realtor said the market was good, that a 3-bedroom in Millhaven moved fast if it was priced right, that Carol shouldn't wait. Carol waited anyway. She wasn't sure what she was waiting for. The house smelled like her mother. Something between cedar and lavender and the particular staleness of a place where one person has lived alone for a long time. Carol walked through it room by room on the first morning, not yet touching anything. The kitchen with the curtains from 1994. The bedroom where the television had been left on when Ruth was taken to the hospital the final time. The hallway bathroom with the crocheted toilet cover Carol had hated as a child and somehow missed now. She found the key on the 3rd day, going through the coat her mother had worn every day until she couldn't anymore. A brown wool coat, worn at the elbows. The key was in the right pocket, on its own ring, just like always. She stood in the basement hallway for a while before she used it. The door opened inward, the light switch was on the left, and it still worked, a bare bulb in the ceiling that came on with a flat click and filled the room with cold white light. The room was about 12 feet by 10. Metal filing cabinets along the far wall, shelves stacked with labeled banker's boxes, a folding table against the side wall with a lamp, a magnifying glass, and a small stack of notebooks. It was immaculate, not forgotten storage, not the overflow of a life accumulating, no holiday decorations, no broken appliances, no boxes of things meant to be donated and never were. Everything in this room had been placed here on purpose. By someone who came back often and worked here and kept coming back. Carol stood in the doorway for a moment. Then she went in. The first cabinet was labeled 1979 to 1984. Inside were hanging folders, each labeled with a name and a date. She pulled one at random. Hendricks, Marion, August 1981. Inside, a property tax notice, a condemnation order, a photograph of a small wood frame house with a porch and a flower bed in front, and a handwritten note in her mother's careful script. Appraised at $28,000. Offered $4,100. Signed under duress. No legal representation present. Carol read the note twice. Then she pulled the next folder. It took her 3 hours to understand the shape of what she was looking at. The folders spanned 20 years. 41 families. Each had received a condemnation order from the Millhaven County Assessor's Office between 1977 and 1996, each citing a different technical violation, structural deficiencies, code non-compliance, public safety concerns that the notes in Ruth's handwriting disputed one by one, with the calm of someone who had checked and rechecked the facts and could not let them go. Each family had been given a buyout offer far below the assessed value of their property. In most cases, less than half. In several, closer to a fifth. Each had been displaced. In almost every case, the house had been demolished within 2 years of the condemnation and replaced by commercial development, a strip mall, a parking structure, a chain pharmacy. The notes documented all of it. The name on every official document was the same. Dale Pruitt, County Commissioner, District 4, 1975 to 1999. Carol had heard that name somewhere. Not often, not recently, not in any particular context she could attach to a specific memory. But the name existed in the background of her childhood the way certain names do. in the places they were never explained. She kept reading. There were newspaper clippings, Prout at ribbon cuttings, Prout at civic award dinners, a profile in the Millhaven Courier from 1989 calling him one of the county's most effective public servants, and one small article from 1983, barely 3 paragraphs, buried on page 12, in which a family named Washington claimed their condemnation had been fraudulent and politically motivated. The article ended with a quote from Prout's office calling the allegation unfounded and the family misguided. Her mother had underlined the word unfounded in red ink. Twice. In the second cabinet, Carol found photographs. Her mother, younger, late 30s, early 40s, in a county government office. Fluorescent light, government furniture, stacks of manila folders on every surface. In several of the photographs Ruth was in the background of group shots. In 3 she was standing near Prout. In 1 she was handing him a folder while he looked at the camera and smiled, and her mother was not looking at the camera at all. She had been there, close enough to see what was happening, close enough to hand him the paperwork. Then Carol found the letters. A bundle tied with kitchen twine, tucked at the back of the second drawer. Handwritten on lined paper, on the backs of envelopes, on pages torn from composition notebooks. Letters from the families. Some were written in the early 1980s, during or just after the displacements. Some were dated years later, 2001, 2007, 2011. Long after the houses were gone and the developers had moved on and any legal path had long since closed. They wrote anyway. They wrote because someone was listening. Ruth had written back to them. Carol found the carbon copies, precise and unhurried. I have your letter. I am keeping your record. I will not let this disappear. Some of the letters were angry. Some carried a grief that had had years to compress into something quieter. One woman wrote simply, I still dream about the porch. My grandmother planted roses along the railing. I don't know where they went. By late afternoon Carol's back ached and she had not eaten since morning and the bare bulb above her had grown warm. She sat at the folding table and looked at the magnifying glass and understood. Her mother had spent years in this room. Not out of obsession, not out of bitterness, carefully, the way you tend something that cannot be fixed but cannot be abandoned either. Near the bottom of the last banker's box, she found the notebooks. 6 of them, spanning 1979 to 2019. Not a diary, a log. Dates, names, amounts, cross-referenced against public records, against the appraiser's certifications, against the development permits filed in the years after each condemnation. Ruth had been a clerk at the assessor's office from 1976 to 1989. She had not been Prout's secretary. She had been the person who processed his paperwork, who typed the orders, who filed them, who, at some point in 1979, began to understand what the paperwork was actually for. The last notebook entry was from November 2019, in a hand slightly shakier than the others. It read, Dale Prout will be 80 years old in March. I am 68, I don't know which of us will go first. I think it will be me. I have left instructions, I hope she finds the room. Behind the notebooks, tucked against the back wall of the cabinet, Carol found an unsealed envelope. Her name was written on the front in her mother's handwriting. Not Carol Hensley, not Dear Carol, just Carol, as if she had known exactly who would find it and had no need to explain. She opened it at the folding table. 2 pages, handwritten, dated February of the previous year, when Ruth was already sick but still clear. Her mother explained everything. She had processed those orders. At first she had not understood what they were for. When she began to see the pattern, the same appraiser, the same buyers, the same developer's name appearing months after each condemnation, she had tried to raise it. With her supervisor, who told her to keep her head down. With the county clerk, who did not return her calls. Once with a lawyer who told her she had no standing and that what she was describing, even if true, was not a crime he could easily put a name to. Then, in the fall of 1983, a man she did not recognize had come to her car in a grocery store parking lot. He had stood at the driver's window and waited for her to roll it down. He told her, calmly, that her daughter was 7 years old and had just started 2nd grade at Riverside Elementary, and that it would be a shame if something disrupted that. She had said nothing after that. She had stayed at the office for 6 more years, copying everything she could, and then she left and never went back. She had taken 3 months to build the room. I kept it locked because I was afraid, she had written. Not for myself. By the end I was not afraid for myself. For you. I didn't want you to carry this. But I could not destroy it. These families lost everything they had, and some of them trusted me with the record of it, and I was the person who filed those papers in the first place. I have had to live with that. I wanted at least to leave one true thing behind. And then the last paragraph. Dale Prude is still alive. 83 years old, still in Millhaven. Last year, someone named a park after him. Carol set the letter down and picked up her phone. She searched his name. The first result was from 3 months ago. A photograph. Dale Prude at a civic dinner, gray-suited, accepting a community service award from the mayor. 84 years old, still well-regarded, smiling at the camera. She sat there for a long time without moving. The realtor called twice that week. Carol didn't call back. She hired a van and loaded the filing cabinets herself, with help from a neighbor who didn't ask questions. She drove back to Columbus with 40 years of her mother's work in the back of the van. She carried the boxes into her spare bedroom, set them against the wall, and closed the door behind her. She didn't go back in for 3 days. When she did, she brought a legal pad and started making a list. The families, the dates, the letters she had read. She searched what she could: county records, obituaries, social media, white pages. Some of those people were gone. Some were not. A woman named Patricia Hendricks, daughter of Marion, was 61 years old and lived 20 minutes from where the family home had once stood. Carol also found the journalist. Not a prominent one. A woman who had written that 3-paragraph story in 1983 about the Washington family, who had since moved to a regional paper in another city. Carol drafted an email. She wasn't sure what to say. She wrote, "My mother kept records for 40 years. I think someone should see them." She sent it before she could reconsider. She didn't know what would come of it. She went back to Millhaven in June to deal with the house. She walked through it again, slower this time. The curtains, the bedroom television, still unplugged. The basement door standing open, the light switch still working, the bulb still burning when she flipped it on. She did not sell the house that year. She told herself it was because the market had slowed. That was part of it. The other part was that she wasn't ready to close up the room, the lamp, the magnifying glass, the folding table where her mother had sat, for years, alone, doing the only thing she knew how to do. Keeping faith with people she had helped harm. Holding a record that was true in a room she kept locked so her daughter would never have to know. Carol had always known the room was there. She just had never let herself open the door. # story notes. Fictional story. The town of Millhaven, all characters including Carol Hensley, Ruth Hensley, Dale Prude, and all referenced families are invented. The mechanism of fraudulent condemnation orders used to displace communities is based on documented historical patterns of municipal corruption, but this story and all its specifics are fictional.